Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns. And lately we've been having some interesting situations. Between the war in the Ukraine and then the Hamas attack on Israel, a lot of people have gotten involved and they're talking about different positions and having lots of different protests and rallies, which is okay. But things have gotten a little out of hand a couple of times. And we're thinking that there's a situation with the crazies on the left and the crazies on the right that need to be thought out a little deeper. And to help us understand it, we have Stuart Gardner, attorney at law.
Hello, George.
Bon vivant and man about town.
Yes.
And you've actually written a paper about this and got it published in one of the local papers. So I'm thinking that you can almost put in a spectrum from the crazies on the left to the far left to the left of center to the center to the right of center, the far right,
And the crazies
and then you get the crazies on the right. So there's a spread of people involved in this thing. And I guess, is that your take on it? Do you think is that wide?
So my hypothesis at the time was, who was I more afraid of? The big argument was, was who's more dangerous? The crazies in the far right or the crazies in the far left? And my hypothesis at the time was the crazies on the right terrify me. Fascism, science deniers, even if the population doesn't want it, we're going to do what's good for you. And the crazies on the left sort of want to give everything away, the communism, the live free healthcare, free apartments, free rent control, and that stuff kind of like that. And my hypothesis at the time was the right scared me more than the lefts.
Yeah.
Because the lefts are just idealists, right? And it would be nice, to have free stuff or cheaper stuff, but we understand the market system. But the crazies on the right really want to change the system. But the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has me doubting my conclusions about what's been going on American universities. We were talking about this before, and I'll just give you one, the Gays for Hamas. How is there a group called Gays for Hamas? Or you and I both know that they don't even, they were talking about how they throw them off a building or something. They don't even do that. It's the family's obligation in some of these communities to eliminate, disturb, change the person who is not a heterosexual, and it doesn't even get out of the family. And only when it gets out of the family does the government come in and push them off a building or something.
Yeah. So the situation, I think, comes down to is that there are some disturbed people around. There's disturbed people on both sides. When you have these so-called peaceful they're riots, they call them peaceful demonstrations, and they burn half the town down over some incident. And yeah, there's some real nasty stuff going on both sides. They've had the Branch Davidians got attacked because somebody thought they had guns, and next thing you know, 80 people got killed and the place got burned down. At the same time, some criminal gets attacked by the cops, and he roughed up and worked over and killed in the process. And there's another riot, and half the town burns down. So these extremes are going just too far to be able to rationalize what they're doing. You can't accept that kind of stuff.
Is it a zeitgeist? Is it because we just don't speak the same language anymore? I mean, I remember the Branch Davidians. I'm too young to remember Jim Jones.
Yeah.
But I also know that, as a society, we have a responsibility to protect citizens. And there were, both of the I don't love the idea of the government going in without probable cause, but I also know that maybe people are in danger. And the policing thing, again, I don't know where to stand on that. I'm not in love with criminal activity, but I'm not in love with cops taking the law into their own hands and becoming executioner either.
Yeah.
I mean, where is where is reasonableness in any of this? Where is it only because the news services put the extremes on, so we don't see the reasonable people?
Well, I think that's another part of the problem is that right now the media, mainstream media, seems to be extremely left-leaning. And those are the only stories that show up. And at the same time, things are, for instance, with George Floyd, he was roughed up by the cops, no doubt about it. They got the videos to show it.
He was killed.
And died in the process. But now they're saying, oh, by the way, he was loaded up on so much fentanyl, he would have died anyway. Or maybe that's what did kill him. So you get these different opinions, and there's no source of this is what really happened. So we don't know. So you can have people who are, as you say, motivated from one side or the other, and they will interpret those results to their satisfaction. Cognitive dissonance.
I mean, it's funny because I'm when I've done shows with you, I'm the more left-leaning guy.
Yeah.
I'm the liberal. I'm not in love with police brutality. I don't like. There was the guy who was killed in New York City for selling cigarettes outside of, I think about it, and there's just, and maybe it's just a training issue, the George Floyd thing, and I don't want to belittle anyone dying.
Yeah.
But there's no reason for either of those people to die. We've got the tools, we've got the manpower. There's got to be a way to subdue a person selling cigarettes outside a store or something like that without creating death. And I can understand the African American community getting up in arms going, yeah, we know he was committing a crime, but is the sentence death? And I can understand that. That to me is a, and it's glorified. It's glorified by the right wing. It's glorified, they'll show the riots and they'll show this and that. But, a lot of these communities don't have a lot but their pride. And, you give the police the sentence to, or the authority to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner, and they push back.
So there's difficulties, and I think there's lots of blame to go around for lots of these
Blame
things.
you, George.
Yep. Why not? I got broad shoulders. Or I used to have broad shoulders. Anyway, so you get into this kind of a situation where something is happening. And one of the classic examples is the squeegee men in New York City. And what would happen is they would line up on the sidewalk next to an exit ramp from out-of-state highway, and they would watch for cars coming in with out-of-state plates, and they would get stopped at the bottom of the ramp, and they would come out and squirt soapy water all over the guy's windshield, and then they would charge him so much to clean it up. And it was such a mess that even if you turned your windshield wipers on, you couldn't get rid of this soapy film. So they had a system. And finally, the police decided that, okay, we'll arrest them all for jaywalking. And then once you got somebody arrested for jaywalking, which is a minor thing, you run their records, and, oh, yeah, we got a couple of warrants on you, and off they go. So as a reasonable approach to how you solve a problem, I think that one worked. And they got into some similar situations in New York also with people jumping the turnstiles. So they just lie in wait for them and, okay, give the message out that you jumped the turnstile, somebody's going to be waiting for you. So that worked. Then you get the other extreme of, we'll just stop them on the street and frisk them. That goes a little bit too far because obviously they haven't done anything wrong, but you're going to just check them out anyway. So you can see where, yeah, this works, that works, and you went too far. So I think the part of the problem that you're alluding to is the training of the police and the, control from on high that, yeah, that's a good thing to do, but this is going too far.
So where do we find middle ground with what's going on college campuses with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I'm trying to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I'm okay with stop the violence. I'm okay with find peace. I'm not okay with from the river to the sea or the elimination of Jews. You know, for every 1,000 people in the world, there's only 2 Jewish people, right? If you took a penny on a piece of paper this size, the penny would be twice the size of Israel, and the piece of paper would be the size of Arab countries, of Muslim-dominated countries. And all the Muslims want is that half a penny that the Jews occupy.
Yeah.
Isn't there a better solution? Can't we apply? You know, can't we apply this reasoning that you have, where it was too much, too little? I mean, you know, they were saying there was a joke that why don't we just give the Jews of Florida? How about New Gaza 1 and New West Bank 1? You know, there's Egypt, there's Morocco, there's Yemen, there's Saudi Arabia, and they have trillions of dollars of our money from oil wealth.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't bemoan any of them. You know, it's theirs, they own the land, they build golden castles. But no one seems to want to solve that problem.
No, and again, you get down into it, the problem was first brought up with Lebanon way back when. And they got into a situation where the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews were all living in Lebanon fighting each other.
Yeah.
And there is 3 religions all believing in the same God, but they're at each other's throats.
Yeah.
So there's more to it than strictly, I think, religious beliefs. It's unfathomable to me.
But why don't we? If the United States, if everyone thinks the United States sort of controls us, we're the one that supplies the money. We have the best arms. We spend the most money in the military. Why don't we become the parent, the adult in the room, and say, you guys can't live together. You know, you guys act like children. You know, Israel occupies an area. They get angry. The Palestinians have been trained to hate Jews. They go over the border. They kill them. They steal. It's just going to be an endless cycle until what we talked about before, World War III starts. And it's not going to start because of a problem in Argentina or a problem in the Arctic. It's going to start because some sort of religious war going on between Arabs and Israelis, or something like that. Why don't we act as like the adult in the room and say, let's separate you guys?
Well, they tried this after World War I, and that's where half of the problems come from. The English and the French got together and said, okay, we're going to divide this area up. And one of the phrases I always got a kick out of was Lawrence of Arabia organized the Arabs to fight the Germans in World War I. And really what he did is got the Arabs to stop fighting each other to concentrate all of everybody on the Germans.
Turn that way.
And then after the war was over, they went back to doing the same thing over again.
Sure.
And you watch some of the things in the country, and if they didn't have the Jews to fight with, they would be with each other.
Yeah.
So there is a fundamental difference between the Sunnis and the Shia that they just continually go at each other. One of the solutions that I've heard recently is that move all the Palestinians out of Gaza into the northern Sinai.
Yeah.
The Egyptians are sort of half and half on whether they would go along with it or not, but that's essentially what you...
I told you, name it New Gaza 1. Give them a soccer team and a fake lake, and let them live their lives in peace.
Yeah, and just get them out of the same area. They just can't...
I mean, if you and I could look at each other and say, this is where World War III is going to start, right? You can kind of see it. You can kind of see Iran getting involved. You can see the Saudis getting involved. You can see Russia get involved. China would get mad. Sooner or later, there's a nuclear missile, and all of a sudden, it's World War III.
Yeah.
Right? There's enough property to figure this out. I think, going back to what the original premise of the show was, is that there's the moderate voices are drawn out. They're drowned out, excuse me. And it's just everybody wants to listen to the crazies on the left, the crazies on the right, and nobody wants to listen to some sort of reasonable solution.
Yeah, I think that's it.
How do we do that, George? We have to fix that.
Well,
this show right here.
Yeah, we do it here.
Right.
We'll do this way every night of the week
until we get 10 million
we
viewers.
wore them out. But you're right in that. Who was it? John Hightower used to have this phrase that. Talking about the only thing you find in the middle of the road is a yellow stripe and a dead armadillo.
I was going to say like a dead squirrel or something like that.
And Okay, I mean, there's that attitude you've been talking about from the start, that there are certain people that just don't want to get together with somebody else who's got a different opinion.
Yeah.
Compromise is a dirty word.
Yeah.
And this is what we're seeing in the Congress right now. This is what we're seeing on the college campuses, that there's got to be a middle position.
It's all dysfunctional.
Yeah. And I think the situation comes down to, more people just need to get real good information as to what's going on.
Is that what it is? Is it a dissemination of disinformation? Is it lack of accountability? Is it not enough money? And this is going to sound strange. I know everyone's like, oh, they make too much money as is. But I could have gotten a politics. Not that I'm so wonderful, but I was involved with the Somerville government. I was on the zoning board of appeals. I ran for alderman, and at some point I realized the money I'm going to make in this government is nowhere near the money I could make as a lawyer, as a freelance lawyer, and I walked away from it. And that not that that's just a like one example, but maybe we're not bringing in the best and brightest. We're bringing in the maybe just the passionate on the right and left. Maybe we need the Wall Street people or the lawyers or the people that can make more money in the private market, but then come in and make more money in the public market.
Well, right now a congressman makes $175,000 a year.
Well, they end up making like $2 billion because of all the insider trading.
And you look at their wealth. And Nancy Pelosi's husband is doing extremely well in the market.
Do you know there's an app? I just read this. There's an app out there that just shows you the congressman's trades. It's like follow the Congress trades, and like these guys are making hundreds of thousands of dollars on these trades, and they're all, it's like, oh, they just bought this medical device company, and she happens to be on the medical appropriations committee or something like that. That's just wrong. I mean, but the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas is getting free houses, and his family's getting free education. They're giving him loans and not paying it back. And then they go, oh, it should have been disclosed. The question's not disclosure. It's the question of taking the gift. You shouldn't have taken it in the first place. Yeah. You can't. Dude, the whole system's broken.
Well, the whole idea, somebody gets into Congress and they immediately give them a telephone to start raising money for your next campaign.
I mean, George, what's the guy that's getting kicked out because he lied through his teeth, the New York Republican?
Yeah.
George, whatever his name is. He should have been kicked out day one.
Yeah.
And, the Democrats should do the same thing. And no one wants to do it because the votes are too important and the morality's not there. I don't know, George. You were saying 2033.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be sooner.
Yeah. Well, the situation can come down to, depending on how this election goes in 2024, we had all sorts of strange things going on after the 2020 election. And now that the videos are starting to come out, no telling what the heck was really going on. And I think this
you think there was election fraud?
They found some funny ballots already. So they say.
Enough to change the election?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows what went on.
Yeah.
And
I mean, is it going to be Biden versus Trump? Is that what it's going to be in 2024?
It looks like it, yeah.
So what are we to do? The 80-year-old, 82-year-old guy who's, obviously it's going to, ruled by committee because he's not doing everything.
No.
Or the guy who's been indicted 70 times for 7 different felonies.
Yeah. So, well, that gets out the other question of, okay, we got a system, and that's the best we can put up.
I think you'd have to be insane to want to be president.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it. It's if I had a choice, it's much funner to be a billionaire.
Yeah. Well, it can be both.
Yeah. Nowadays, I guess so.
Well, it's the other old story about any kid in America can grow up to be president. That's the risk you have to take.
Yeah.
And we get down to the situation that these are the people we're electing. And you look at Beverly, we just had an election, and there was one contested vote in the whole thing. Two people were running for the same seat on school committee. Every other position was a done deal.
There was no competition.
No competition until you get to the mayor. And there were a couple of people that talked about being on the ballot. One got trashed and got scared off. Another one got trashed just before the ballot. And that's it. So there we've got a system that says this is how we can take care of ourselves and take care of business. And yet it gets reduced to nothing more than do it again, same bunch,
Yeah.
no change. Yeah, I would like to believe that, we got the best possible people in there, but certainly there's got to be somebody better, or at least somebody thinks they can be better.
Term limits? How long has Cale been in? This is his third term?
He's had 10 terms, 10 years already, so it'd be 12 years now.
So it's his fourth term. Is that right? 4 years? I don't even know.
He's in for 2 more years.
He's in for 2 more years, but what?
But the mayor after that will be in for 4 years.
Oh, I understand.
Because they passed the 4-year.
4-year change, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think term limits in Congress is a great idea. I don't know why we don't do term limits. And here's the thing about term limits. It doesn't have to be, you're not expelled. You can run twice, and then you got to sit out. And then if people love you that much, after you sit out 2 or 4 or 6 years,
you can
come back.
You can have several versions of term limits. But just a matter of you force the system to
recite.
Think about, do we really want to have this guy in there again?
Yeah, they never leave.
The effect of it being an incumbent.
Is there something like a 90% or 95% re-election rate?
And one of the things I always got a kick out of the Trump campaign is that he essentially came out of the woodwork. Nobody knows where he came from.
Sure.
And he started making these rather outrageous claims on Twitter and whatever else he could get his hands on. And immediately the left-leaning papers had a jump on it and contradict it. And it's the old joke about, I don't care what you say about me, just spell my name right.
Yeah.
Which they did. And he got all sorts of name recognition. And I'm not certain that everybody that got his name off of a YouTube or a newspaper article really knew what he was for or against. They just knew the name.
Well, who was Groucho Marx said, "Are you going to believe me or what you see with your own 2 eyes?" I don't mind some of the Trump policies, but how can you trust a guy who lies 24/7? That, and he even says what he's going to do. He's just going to revenge on his enemies. I don't need a president coming into office that's just going to divide the country again, even if he has just beefs with, maybe if there's a false accusation or something. I mean, that's not the way you run a country. That's not even the way you run a business.
No, that's exactly the problem.
You can't come into Coke and say, I'm just going to revenge my enemies. You got to sell Coke. Not cocaine, but Coca-Cola.
Or coal.
Or coal. Yeah, whatever. You have to sell it. You can't. And I think it would be a disaster for the country if Trump was reelected. I'm not too excited about Biden being reelected either. But
well, it gets to be another one of these hold your nose.
I
I
guess the one good thing about Massachusetts is our vote doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but you get down to the situation of what can we do about it? You can take out papers and run for office.
I'm worried, George. I've never had so many of my friends call me up and say I'm scared. I'm getting a gun license, or I'm taking gun lessons, or I've never thought about moving to South America. And I'm telling you, in the past 6 months, especially the past 2 months, I've never had more of my associates, I'm 54, so about that age, go, you know what? I'm terrified, and I can't blame them. I don't, it's, and you look to some sort of reasonable, rational authority to say it's going to be okay, and I can't find that. I can't find that person.
No, there really isn't a person in charge that's controlling anything. And like you mentioned earlier, Biden's got a committee behind him.
Yeah, that's a president by committee.
Yeah, and the other one that bothers me is when you start to think about the problems we're facing, the government has been set up into all these different bureaucracies that have veto power. And the problem we're facing right now with the Beverly-Salem Bridge, not the Beverly-Salem,
The Bridge Street.
the Hale-Whitaker Bridge, or Dunham Road, or the attempt to dredge the Bass River. They were all processes that, okay, let's work on it. All of a sudden you get these committees coming out of the woodwork that say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't put a bridge in there because we got to think about the spawning fish going upriver, you know. Or the Corps of Engineers came up with the idea that, well, we thought you could drop that stuff up in the deep ocean, but now that you talk about actually doing it, no, you can't take it out and dump it in the ocean. And there we were with the barges already set to start dredging, and that's the end of that. So Dunham Road's the same thing. It would be relatively simple to, at least in my mind, to extend Dunham Road out to Essex Street. Well, you can't do that because there's all of these things that keep getting in the way. And there's nobody in charge that says, I don't care what you said, make it happen.
Well, that's how the highways were built. I mean, that's how the American highway system was built. If they had asked anybody permission, they never would have gotten built.
Oh, yeah,
They
the
just,
same thing with the railroads.
the railroads too.
Yeah.
But what do you do once? I mean, you know, this sort of become full circle where, you know, we've got full communication with everyone. You've got everyone's online, and everyone has to stand up for, you know, everyone's planted in their position. They don't, you know,
Nobody wants to move.
Nobody wants to move.
Yeah. And anyway, so here we are. We've thrashed at it for a while, and we haven't got a solution.
No.
So now, this is the problem. We have just created the problem. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us this evening. And as I've said many times before, if you've got a comment, send me an email. My email address is at the end of the credits. Or if you want to join us and take a seat at the chair and expound on your virtues, hey, this is the time. Thanks again. Talk to you later.